Yeah.
You're fine.
Okay.
That's because mine was.
We've got young Frank covering us up, though.
It's young Frank's mic.
Young Frank. I got a few. I was nice in the ones I picked, though. See. How is everybody today? Happy Saturday. We ended up being at Aiden's orthodontist for 2 hours. And that is pure, like, I would say an hour and 45 minutes of it was waiting time.
And how long did the actual adjustment?
Like 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, you know?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, you're going to have to not do that anymore.
Not do what? Orthodontist?
We're blocked.
Who's blocked?
Our stream is blocked for playing that song.
Oh, they really don't like that song. Oh, Lord. Yeah. Literally that song.
Yeah, I'll take it back.
Put a 1 in chat when you can hear me. This happened on our VIP bus too.
Yeah.
We thought then though that it was like 2 hours. That's why I'm like, oh, I've started.
Point taken, Monica. Exactly. How quickly were they able to take action on that?
Right? Isn't that interesting? Oh, Kenneth. He's very excited. Okay, let's get Frank off there. All right, coming back to chat. Sorry about that, you guys. I just launched in, and then he's like, wait. I think your stream is suspended. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's that song. Okay, same thing happened before. But I was like, oh, this is the one song we haven't quite played yet since it got cut off last time. I was going to cut it out anyway afterwards. Let's see who's here. All right, get myself composed again. So yeah, 2 hours at the orthodontist. So fun. Hey, Cranky, Memphis Mama, Michelle, Rose, Monica, Voice for the Voiceless. I know Outlander's here. So we are wrapping up the Milli Vanilli series today by taking a deeper look at Frank Farian, who ended up being rather fascinating, but on his own, right? So of course, Milli Vanilli is a large part of what will be his legacy. He's 81. He's still alive. He owns MCI Records and many of its subsidiaries. He's retired in Miami where he sings duets with his daughter. And, this really didn't affect his career, shockingly enough. But the more I looked into everything, I'm like, so I knew that he had issues with Boney M before. I knew that with Milli Vanilli, it was not his first time putting together a band where the front folks were not actually the studio singers. I knew that. I knew about Boney M, and then it was actually right after Milli Vanilli. He was going to capitalize on it. He's like, let's do the real Milli Vanilli. That's how he released the second album. But even then, he still pulled in another guy that had nothing to do with singing on the album. Now, at least he had him singing in concert, but again, he felt like he needed to have, the look in front of the group. But the fascinating thing about Frank Farian is that he had and has a very successful career, but it didn't start that way. He actually tried to be an artist. So he produced his own music. He's clearly a talented producer. His shady business practices are what we're talking about. But he released 25 singles on his own that tanked. That's how he started his career. Well,
Well, the one you just mentioned was one of my favorites.
Which one?
You said that he did the LaBouche.
Yeah, well, that was after Milli Vanilli. Well, but they didn't have issues, But so yes, he was, and I didn't know that. That's something I found out because I'm like, I remember LaBouche.
Be my lover, be my lover. I was like, this song fucking jams.
Yeah.
So we found out in our research that there's hey, Frank, you done some good fucking work. Why all the shady shit around it?
Well, I mean, maybe we'll kind of come up with some answers to that.
Shady poop around it.
Yeah, swear. Okay, so he plays music, he sings, he obviously songwrites and produces. But 25 singles he put out.
Mm-hmm.
Starting in 1958. Really? Ray? I almost feel like we should just put up Nature Cam. Fuck it, because this is going to keep happening. He's figured out how to knock.
Look, stay on the point here, okay? That light is not out. Kicking it kicks it back on. That means that there's a short in the wire.
What are you talking about?
Something totally unrelated.
No, my cat, you guys.
Do you even remember what you were saying?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
We have a very friendly girl squirrel who's been trying to crawl in all day. And then Ray tried to crawl out while I was outside.
Ray's still trying to crawl through the glass.
He's figured out, though, how to put the stopper down that keeps the slider locked. And for some reason, he keeps doing that. I don't know if he thinks it's going to get him closer or he's like trying to give the squirrel some in.
Will you get back to the point? What were you saying?
So 1958 is when he started putting out singles. Now, he was born in 1941. So he started young. And it was the 25th single that finally did something. But guess what? It was put out as Boney M.
Uh-huh.
And it had a flag with, it was the first time he didn't put his face on the album. First time he didn't put his face on the album. And so there's, like I said, I pulled a few examples here of what we were looking at before then. And these were just commercial flops. I still have, look at that. I still have Starting Soon. Oh, I'm with it today. Love it. Okay, there. At least now we have the correct one. And then you have something pinned. Can we unpin that so we can just take in young Frank in all his glory? All right. So this is and you can see he's young. Like I said, he's 81 now. But even when you look, so the picture I have up there in the corner, that is in the mid 90s. So, young, So they all looked a little something like this, and none of them sold. And then comes Boney M, right? So the album, it is a flag with the silhouette of a lady dancing who has an afro. Mm-hmm. But it's just silhouette, and he called it Boney M rather than Frank Farian, or Frankie Farian is kind of what he went by in the beginning, but then Frank Farian, and then finally he's like, let's try this. Well, it took off. Okay, so now this is going to sound like a familiar story. Anybody who listened to the first discussion that we had. So he's like, well, crap, now we got to go promote it. There's money to be made here. Hires stand-ins, including backup singers, whole front group. Okay. Boney M has, I'm afraid to play any of it now, kind of a funk soul sort of sound in the 70s. And he hires all African-American models, dancers. Some of them could sing, and they would do like a little singing at shows. but we're talking like the backing track is like dominant, right? So it's just no. For the one single, and that turns into a whole album, and that turns into this major group, and that was his first go round with it.
We also found his massive playlist of his own music on YouTube Music.
Yes.
And I have to give props to the Olin Mills camera director on that.
I mean, we're talking old school stuff here, you guys.
Look at this guy. I love you. I look up at the sky when you tell me you love me. I like Rocky, the movie Rocky. I'm trying to just do my impression of this of these songs of his. I think Rocky is good. And most of these are, not. I don't know why they're not in musical form. They're all from videos. I guess somebody. Oh wait. Let's see what that looks like.
He's got them on.
Oop.
Yeah, don't worry. And we're not gonna play the music because obviously within 3 minutes we'll get
right. Well, with only some of them, But here I'm gonna
Sharp Dressed Man. There he goes.
I want to show this album cover though. So in contrast to the ones that I just showed you, this is.
I think this is from that album cover you just showed.
Yes. I mean, and by the way, for the day, it's not like he would, but his sound didn't match the look. I mean, I told Crafton it's going to be a hard discussion because I don't want to.
The beauty of the still shot.
I want to tread lightly with it, but clearly back then there was an issue with white men singing R&B music, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. So do the ends justify the means? You know what I mean? So this is a little different. When we're talking about a solo career, I do think it's a little different than things like Milli Vanilli, where, I mean, I think eventually there were victims of Frank Farian, without a doubt. But in these early days, it's a whole different conversation because society as a whole just was not ready to hear that kind of music coming out of somebody that looked as he did. And so, by the time he decided to do this, he'd already had like a
Baby, do you want to bump? Parts 1 and 2.
Shot to number 1. Until then, he had, as an artist, had gone by Frank Farian or Frankie Farian when he first started.
Yeah.
This was the first use of Boney M, and this was the cover. And you think back to those days, it's like there was an MTV and all this other stuff, right? Now there were television appearances and things like that, but that's where as a business person, he's thinking, well, gosh, as soon as I don't put my face on this album cover or on the single cover, this was just a single, that made the difference. Not like his sound was any different. Not by then. I mean, when he first started out, I did listen through some of it, and I was like, oh my God, some country sound and old school
Outlander
stuff.
says it was a culture shock to Germans.
Yeah,
so
I would imagine. Yeah.
There was a thing throughout the 70s and 80s, and it went into the early 90s as well, where I think that it's an exploitation game. It's a weird style of. I don't know that I'm going to say that I consider Frank Farian to be racist in any given way. I don't think so.
Well, he's not racist. I don't think. No,
I think that he had good taste in music.
I think it's the opposite. So his daughter, he's done. His daughter sings, and she has a good voice, by the way.
Yeah, but culturally during that era, and I know this from being a musician myself. Outlander could probably vouch for this.
Yeah,
if you could imitate an African American person to the point to where they thought that you were, you were considered like you had some kind of superpower.
Yeah.
Even when you look at the movie The Commitments, when there are moments in there where that guy even says, if you close your eyes, you think he's black. There was a huge, and I never really fully understood how that was supposed to be such a task or an achievement. It's like, well, people are people, and well, I think that African American musicians on the whole are totally superior. Yeah. My favorite drummers, my favorite bass players, my favorite singers are all African American. Sorry, other than in the heavy metal land, you know. I mean, even there, come on, man. Fishbone, and there were bands that were African American that were nailing that genre too. So yeah. It's just an odd little cultural period in the music industry worldwide, if you will. I don't know why. I wonder if there's some kind of marketing thing that these people are looking at numbers and figures, and they're like, well, you got to pander to the white audience. Like,
well, I think the culture shock thing is what does that, though, because it's not that they were not receptive to African American singers. However, it didn't sell Crafton.
That's what I'm talking about.
In his market,
those are the numbers. Sell. Yeah, it's like, well, you've got.
And he has an affinity. Yeah. I mean, that's what he loves. Is this, so. They were kind of a disco funk band, Boney M, you know what I mean? And he was Boney M. I mean, it's like he was singing the lead vocals, you know what I mean? So it's like that was him. That wasn't known for a long time. Yeah. And Boney M was active clear up into the early 2000s. You know what I mean? They had a switch in their lead and all that stuff. But it's just, again, even when that came out, it was relatively unscathed. And then you think about it, and is it any wonder that he just decided to out Milli Vanilli, even though it was his doing? And just throw.
I wonder too.
Rob and Fab into the bus. Yeah, why not?
In the scheme of it, wasn't there was some issue with the guy who actually sang, acting like he was going to step up, and he started throwing this fit, and Farian panicked is what it sounds like.
Well, are you talking about Milli Vanilli, or are you
talking about Milli Vanilli's case? The guy was like, yo, mofos. That was me.
Well, no, that happened before they even charted in the US.
Yeah.
When it was charting in Europe, in Germany, Girl, You Know It's True, was big by the time they were putting this together. And I don't want to say the wrong singer because there's a couple.
Yeah, but that's what
I'm saying. But it's the only one that he
whistleblower.
Yes, he went to the press, but he was not overly whistleblowing. He retracted because he got paid to. In the end, he got paid more than Rob and Fab did.
That's my point. Is
the hush money was more than they ended up leaving the gig with.
And who was it that paid him?
Frank Farian.
Exactly. Thank you. Point made. Ding.
Well, and the album backers. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's not all him, but that's the point. Is it's like, no, this was not something. He's to this day, he's never had repercussions. Right? I'm super excited about the documentaries because I'm telling you, between the biopic and the documentary, which sound like they're going to end up hitting this year, both of them, that's a lot of saturation for this not have been talked about for all these decades. And it's like suddenly this is going to be back on people's minds and they're going to see it a different way, like the full story for the first time.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, in today's day and age, if this will be the first time that there's some outrage that holds, even if it's just public outrage, that holds Frank Farian accountable, even if it just ends up being his legacy that gets held accountable. Yeah. Because right now it's you don't find, and again, he owns MCI at 81. I mean, he went on to have a full successful career that is still going. He gets to be in Miami, totally, with his younger girlfriend, soaking it up and collecting the paychecks while everybody else is running the day-to-day operations, So hold on a second.
Yes, they did, Monica. Yeah. They gave it back. and said it should go to the people who sang it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had the big press conference where it started out okay, but then all of a sudden all the reporters just started just ganging up and attacking him and screaming all kinds of weird questions at him.
Link to. So we really got into focused in on the Milli Vanilli aspect and the fact that this was common practice. And we walked through all the examples of how this was, they weren't the largest selling that did this. That went to CNC Music Factory for Everybody Dance Now, who totally ripped off Martha Wash's voice and put a stand-in for what everybody knows of that song, you know? And they weren't the last.
Yeah.
And they weren't the first. I mean, it was not this big scam. I mean, these two could not set up their own sound equipment and all this other stuff. They were scapegoated in a way that I swear it would not happen today. Yeah. But this is the mastermind, and this is a guy who practiced this as a matter of profession. But the reason I think it's an interesting discussion is because, so he had good music. Some of it's dated in my opinion. So for instance, I like the Boney M stuff he was doing. And I like some of the later singles, even though a lot of them are not in English. They're well put together. But he started with kind of the, he blended, if you know what I mean. With the kind of late 50s sound coming in early 60s, and it just kind of, it was unremarkable in my opinion, and I think that was him trying to force himself into what you would expect someone that he looked like to sound like. He was trying to do more of the contemporary sound of what his stereotype fit,
Yeah,
aesthetically. So perhaps as a matter of timing, the aesthetics were that important in the industry.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone feels about that. Like I said, I feel like, generally speaking, to the point that we're at now, where he sees that, hey, if I do the music I like and don't say it's me. Okay. So at this point, he hasn't put anything together. He's just like, let me just do an album cover that doesn't have me on it and call it something other than my name and put it out and let's see what it does. And suddenly it's good. That's kind of a strong message.
Yeah.
When you've spent that many years trying and failing, and it's not like your skills are any different or your sound's that much different. I don't know. But what I was going to say now is it seemed to be like with his bands though, this went on where it was like he would put African-American singers in front. And that included the backup singers, you guys. He'd have white studio backup singers. And then he would not use them. He'd enter into these contracts where they also were like signing NDAs and things like that, to allow for African-American women to do the dancing and mime the singing. So when we talk about like racism, I mean, I don't think that he's racist. Other than
no. I'm just saying that because our reporting on this matter is as balanced as we can be.
Well, here's the deal. His girlfriends have historically been African American. His daughter is half African American.
Yeah.
So clearly
this is more of a business.
Well, he's
straight up business.
Yeah.
Decisions that are very
it's
shady.
What he finds beautiful, right? So it's like I feel like we can just ignore that portion of it from here on out. Other than focusing in on the fact that when he tried to do this as a white singer, as himself, it didn't work. And that's what led to the album cover that was enough to finally have people even give him a chance in terms of, getting any attention for the music. But he did exactly what he did with Milli Vanilli. Other than Boney M, at least, was given the heads up that they were not promised anything.
Yeah.
They were not. Now it's not. None of these arrangements ever that he entered into were without issue. There was always somebody who got pissed off, because as it rose, because it was a silent thing. It's like, just because they knew doesn't mean that they're not the ones out there working their ass off. But let's talk business. Let's talk law. They're also not entitled to royalties. I mean, they're essentially a performer. They're a gig worker.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They're getting paid to go do interviews where they're pretending that they are the voice on the album. They're being paid to go do the shows, and and they're full-on productions, and they're doing everything except for singing. But they're paid as though they're just, the same as like a backup dancer would. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if you're not constantly doing it, you're not going to have it, and there's no residual at all because they're not involved in the music. Sorry, I'm going to take a minute to look at chat before we launch deeper into Boney M. Oh no! Yeah, I loved LaBouche. I actually did not know that he had put the
that
band.
song's in a lot of movies.
Yeah. Well, licensing. Yeah. But yeah, I love that song. I dance to that song all the time. Yeah, it is. When I visited Germany at the time, they were always behind music. Okay, so that's interesting. So that would have been super progressive then. Because even here in the States, Elvis got a lot of criticism for the same sort of things, for having black sound, for having for his dance moves. It was earth-shattering over here. You know what I mean? It was like parents didn't want their kids. It was like a big deal. So that's interesting because if they're behind, I'm making the assumption, but I'm like, yeah, that would have been super progressive then, maybe more than they could handle. So I'm going to say this: I don't fault him for releasing albums without being forthcoming. It's a stage name at that point, right? And is it mislead? Is that album club cover maybe mislead? Well, what maybe. Yeah, no. You could make an argument. It leaves an impression. You're probably going to think that it is, that it is a black artist. But it's a silhouette. It's clearly a man singing. So, it's not the singer that's on there, So I don't know. It's at the point that he hires Bobby Farrell and the rest of the lineup. Bobby Farrell was like this extraordinarily dynamic performer, by the way, which seems to also be a pattern. Who made the shows, you know what I mean? Let me see. Maybe we can play a little bit of him without, because I want to get at least the imagery across. We don't have to play any of the song, but let me see if I can find a good video. He was an amazing dancer. He was just a great performer. Very different vibe than Rob and Fab. But I'm gonna be honest with you, Rob is an amazing performer. It's I watch you can tell the early stuff because they weren't that good at the lip syncing yet. They'd be dancing and they'd forget to keep the mic in believable things like that. But for a very short time. Once that was corrected, to me, I still to this day don't even care that they're not singing, but especially Rob, that he wasn't singing. I'm like, those guys worked their asses off on that stage, and there would not have been, I mean, I still think Milli Vanilli wouldn't have been like it without those two.
It's easy to forget that music is only a subsection of the entertainment industry.
Yes.
There's no such thing as the music industry.
Well, and
there is, but it is a part of the entertainment industry, and they entertained everywhere they went.
Well, and another interesting thing though too is nowadays where there's not a record, there's not an 8-track, there's not a cassette tape, there's not even a CD for most of us anymore, right? So they're making like pennies on their song. It's like it's harder than ever to make money as an artist in music these days, and that's why so many people tour. It's like Aiden will. Okay, my son's like 19, right? So he'll say things like, "Oh well." Aerosmith's still out there touring because music today sucks. I'm like, well, I'm not going to argue with that, right? There's some exceptions, but okay. But I'm like, no, actually, it's because Aerosmith has to tour, to make money. It's why these people come out of retirement and stuff. It's like that is where they get a chunk of their money that isn't eaten up. I mean, a bigger piece of the pie is theirs. It's how they can stay afloat. Hold on. But so this practice, like, even though people agreed to it, most didn't understand, and this includes Bobby Farrell, who did end up having gripes because he kept them touring, and they become the face of these bands, even though they're not necessarily the voice, but they're also tasked with this huge burden of never ever letting that on, But it becomes obvious that, like, hey, Frank is going to retire on this shit. He's going to be getting residual from this from here to eternity. I mean, he's the producer now. There came a point where it's like he had stake in the labels that were doing. I mean, he got an amazing, like, triple dipping cut of the music. You know what I mean? Hold on, I'm letting it get to the place where this is Boney M, you guys. Oh, I hate that I can't play the music. I feel like
we can play a few seconds of it. But...
yeah, hold on. If I unmute, is it going to be weird though? That's Frank's voice. Those are white girls singing, but here's the band, right? Now he would do this for a whole show. Like, I've let the concerts kind of, like, there's whole concerts out here on YouTube, right? So this is something that you get interested in any way, and you look this stuff up. I mean, like, this is Hammer Pants before there was Hammer, okay? I think Hammer ripped him off, okay? This guy's amazing. We don't even have to hear the music to know that he had value unto himself, too.
Yeah.
He was able, unlike Milli Vanilli, and this is something to note, he was able to finagle a better deal. Once. Something that probably pissed Farian off enough that not only did he feel the need, as we played the clip, I think last time.
You can stop the video. There you go. Oh no, I was saying just pause it because those outfits.
It's 1979.
I like them. I'm gonna.
You were wearing little cowboy boots and like a diaper or whatever, or maybe not. No, you would have been like 6. Never mind. 7.
I was wearing my fucking Sears t-shirt and doing my own dance.
Yeah.
included a lot of jumping and grabbing in the air.
Oh, wow.
Like that.
Neato.
It never caught on, but
so stylish.
Yeah. A lot of just randomly grabbing up in the air while I jump. Sears never got on board with sponsoring me.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, that was right, Michelle. That was before the mustache came in.
Yeah.
And the glasses.
You were cool, honey. But you were older than me, yeah. So I mean, they're out, but like I said, I mean, it was so anyway, so that was 79. He left in 81, okay? But he did negotiate a higher salary, and Farian was not into it, by the way. Not into it, but he did not want to lose him because he felt, I mean, he knew this was like a heavy touring band. Everybody wanted to interview. They were always on interviews. I mean, you know, this was like this was the face, and people, he was charismatic, you know? So clearly, like, Frank wasn't that into that, because he started off, Fab did an interview with Vlad TV, and he had said it in other interviews before, but he's quoting Frank, where he looked at him and Rob when they signed their contracts, right? And said, "Don't fuck with me." I mean, that's a little intimidating. Like, you're like, oh yeah, great, we're gonna do business. It's gonna be so amazing. Now we know now that they couldn't understand the fucking contracts that they were signing. They were only given a couple pages of like a whole document, right? And they were verbally promised things that were totally contrary to what they were asked to sign and what they did sign, and then were held to and threatened and told, like, if you stop now, you owe us back everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys, they're holding Grammys at this point. They had been touring like nobody's business. What was it again?
180 days in 6 months, I think,
or no, it was like 86 shows or something like that in 180 days.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like grueling. It was grueling. I mean, that's when you start to realize it's like, you know, it's like the circus. It's like what's the thing, you know, like just like being put up on the stage, like over and over and over, you know, very little time in between. That's grueling. You know what I mean? But they also aren't going to benefit long-term from it. But at the same time, they're the rising star. So the second time he did not negotiate the second time. And he fired him. And out goes Bobby. And let me show you who replaced him. What was interesting is that, okay, so, and by the way, Bobby Farrell was a dancer. So this is, I mean, it's so incredibly, and he was a singer, you know, but this the difference too. Frank would let him sing a little bit on stage. But in the end, you know, if we were to scale it out, it was like a backup singer, really. Yeah. You know, it was very faint compared to what was blaring through, and it was only on certain songs. It was just.
So finally, Pringles stepped in and sponsored me for a minute.
Oh, God.
And they were like, but I had to shed the Sears t-shirt, and so the whole thing just became, I couldn't even read. Look. I couldn't even read yet, and I had signed that contract with Pringles. Yeah. I had the mustache, so I was happy.
Yeah. So the next time he asked, they let him go. Okay.
He sound like Bobby.
That was in 1981, but catch this. So he replaces him, Reggie Tisbo. I'll show you what he looks like here shortly. Not the same stage performance, not the same energy. What's funny is he didn't even like alter his voice or anything. Where the hell did that bird get garbage? Anyway, sorry you guys. Didn't alter the sound, so I don't even know, right? I can't find anything. I could not find anything that indicates if there was any sort of scrutiny about them changing their lead singer and the sound being pretty much the same. But either way, not as great of a performer. The stage show started to swindle down. Guess what? 3 years later, he goes back and rehires him. It's like this guy is just like out for himself. I swear, it's horrible. So he left like for good in '86. He only came back for 2 years. And the same thing started happening. I mean, it was just this constant battle over money and over residuals. And, by this time they've been performing for so long. He's like, and by the way, this is a bargaining chip. Okay. So in negotiations, it's like, yeah, okay. So you gave me the money I wanted once. You let me go the second time. You tried it for 3 years without me. We're not making what you used to. It was not a dynamic show. You were not selling the tickets you used to. You needed me back. So he goes back, and it's only 2 years later, and he wants to, so I think that's where Farian picked up this, like, I'm not going to negotiate, whatever the interpersonal dynamic is there. But Bobby Farrell's daughter did a lot. Zanilia. I don't know how to pronounce it, you guys. I'm going to put it in chat. She did interviews, though. Bobby Farrell passed away after he was not with the band anymore. And there were some similar claims, okay? Essentially, when he hired him back, she claims that there were promises made that never were delivered upon. And she doesn't expound on that. But it sounds like Bobby came back with some solid things like pay increase.
Thanks, Outlander.
But they still were kind of up in the air and not want, he didn't want to nail down the residuals, which is what Bobby wanted. He's like, listen, I'm spending all my good years here, right? He's a dancer, he's a singer who could sing, and he's being denied that chance because he has to be the front person to but it's like, this is a mutually beneficial, it's supposed to be anyway, because of course he gets the fame and the recognition, but he's carrying this freaking lie. I mean, it's just a shitty thing if you think about it. But 2 years later, whatever it was, that she did not spell out, but it sounds like it came down to residuals. He quit for good.
Let me know when the drive's open. Okay?
Can you turn it back on? Because it probably needs to go one more time. All right. Sorry, I'm live. So.
Yeah, no problem. Ray, do you want to stay here or go out here?
You say hi to everybody?
Huh?
You say hi, since they can hear you anyway. No. You're too cool for everyone now.
No, I've got some Toradora to watch.
Ah, Dora the Explorer? What?
No, Toradora. It's an anime.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I knew it wasn't Dora the Explorer. I was just thinking shit. I'm not funny anymore. Moms are so uncool, I love you. He's going to go with you. Oh, look at Ray.
Huh?
Ray's going to go with you. Look at him. He's like, let's go, boy. Yeah, he wants Aiden, not us. So that was 86. Okay, so Boney M kept going. Different, like I said, they were still touring in the early 2000s. They just had different front folks. Eventually, he did own up to it. Bobby had a say in that too. So, he was the one who kind of started ousting the situation. And, So by the time Milli Vanilli came up, Frank feels like he was screwed over. You know what I mean? Like, we had agreements, you didn't stick to them. Other side of the story is that, yeah, we had agreements, and you said you were going to figure something out for this, and you didn't. And, you got two dudes who are like, I am Boney M, So then fast forward, and in, 88, 89, he's written and recorded Girl, You Know It's True. And again, wants different faces because these are, I don't know what to say about that. Older gentlemen, some of them. The girls are white. Charles Shaw is the person you were referencing earlier. The only song he ever did the rapping portion of was Girl, You Know It's True. And that's because he talked to the press, but then he also got hush money, which compensated him higher than any of the studio singers then, with, I'm not going to remember his name, with the exception of one, and that's because he also was a composer. And to this day, he's the only one who gets royalties off of some of the songs from that album. So let me see. I think I still have my notes because I want to actually give credit to the singers too. But John Davis took over Charles Shaw. And, but there again, too, we didn't have anything where anybody questioned, like, hey, the raps on Girl, You Know It's True is much different than, Baby Don't Forget My Number or whatever. It seemed pretty seamless. I think back and I'm like, I had no clue, right? I had no clue. And I'm like, I never heard a difference. You know what I mean? Now, if I listen, I can catch it. But that's because I know about it. So I'm like, I'm bringing up the, Bobby Farrell thing. I'm going, yeah, I guess, like, worked on us. Think about what Fab's parts and songs were, and the fact that Girl, You Know It's True was, the first major one out the gate, and is so well played and well known. But then along with the others, the three other hits from that album, nobody ever noticed that, hey, those are two different voices, He got away with these kind of things. So when he's putting all that together, the thing that was different when he went to Milli Vanilli and specifically in negotiating with Rob and Fab were that they were adamant that they wanted to sing. That's what they wanted to do. Okay. They both were amazing dancers. They both had performance backgrounds. They both had competitions in there, but competitive guys, right? So Fab did like trampoline, like gym. Like I found a video and I was like, dang, Rob did breakdancing. He did competitive breakdancing. Rob was in a band before all this, but it's like, the two of them, that's what they wanted to do, is sing. That's what they were hoping for. So this was like their break, man. Let me cut back to some of the other things that Farian had done, because he's also a producer, right? So clearly he has a heart for doing his like solo music as an artist. He just never was the front person of the successful, times of his music. Okay, so the same year that Bobby left, right, he also got hired by Meatloaf to produce and mix Blind Before I Stop. And then he sang, listen to this, he sang the backing vocal, Frank sang the backing vocals from the Meatloaf album Rock and Roll Mercenaries, but credited Meatloaf's usual backup singer, John Parr. So by this time, it was like, he didn't even want to be listed. You know what I mean? He like did not want his voice out there. And I thought that was a little interesting, you guys, because I'm going, okay, so he wasn't yet ousted as the voice of Boney M, but they don't end on good terms, right? So the same year when he has already contracted up to work with Meatloaf, ends up singing some backing vocals, he chooses not to credit himself. I don't know.
Didn't want the attention, maybe? I don't know.
Or have anybody match up the voices. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's weird. I mean, it's like maybe at that point he was hoping people just forgot, or didn't know. I mean, he was in the American market at that point. So, I mean, did they know about these little non-successful 25 attempts? Right? I mean, maybe it was a matter of not wanting his voice out there credited. So, so for Milli Vanilli, he also didn't sing. So that was the other difference. So but you have to remember that Boney M kept going. Just again, the different lineup. So that was his piggy bank in terms of his own voice. Just go over the chat before I launch in, because when we get into Robin Fab, yes, well, and he made a ton of it. Hey, Beckachu. Beckachu knew what it was. Oh yeah, you should have seen the dagger eyes I got when I'm like, Dora the Explorer, and he's like, ugh. I'm like, okay, yeah. My humor is just not what it used to be. There's Aiden's music page, you guys, if you want to sub to my son. He writes and produces and sings and does all his own music. It's what he's in school for now. Thank you, Outlander. So let's go over here. It's always about isn't it? Yeah. Get into music stuff, it sure is. Do you want to say anything, honey? I'm going to pull up my next round of pictures. Well, I have to swap out pictures and you're
One
like,
day you'll learn.
Good story, honey. Yeah, cool.
One day you'll learn to sing. Drag it to a window. What are you looking for?
I'm just having to change out pictures so that there's room.
You knew the scandals would stop the sales, yeah.
Well, but somehow he just went unscathed. You know what I mean? It's like it never stuck to him. It just didn't. I mean, it's very bizarre. Like with Boney M, it's very hard really to even track down much information about what kind of reaction. I mean, there was no media stories like there. I mean, there was like an outrage and just a media saturation with very twisted and warped narratives around Robin Fab. But that didn't happen with Boney M. And they were allowed to just keep going unscathed. Nobody really seemed to care. Now, when there did end up becoming a time where the singing became live, but that was after Milli Vanilli. I mean, they still toured for another like 12 years and just were like, okay, yeah, sorry about that, sorry about that. Here you go. We're gonna put some real singers in here now. Okay, cool. And it just was no big deal. And with Milli Vanilli, it was this big, huge deal, but it didn't fall on Frank Farian where it should have. It's enraging.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me go back. I want to talk a little bit more about. Oh, what happened?
She wants to talk about treats.
What you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about some treats over here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You do have a great singing voice. We know that.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're going to stop singing now that we...
Mm-hmm.
Come on, Izzy. Belt us one.
Okay. Okay. So he had concurrent stuff going on. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get pictures up. It's so frustrating. This is why people do pre-recorded, by the way. I'm positive of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you're live that all this crap goes awry. Hold on. If I can't get pictures, you guys, I'll just start talking and we'll just wing it. So, also before Milli Vanilli, I want to make sure it's clear his reputation by the time he meets Robin Fab. So keep in mind that even though people did not know it was him singing, he was their producer and had all kinds of other credits too in terms of composing some of the songs. It's his studio they're using, all this different stuff. He had a lot of say in the music, obviously, and the public just didn't know that he was also singing. Okay. So he was successful just being their producer, and being the founder. That's the other thing. He put the group together. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big thing, but it wasn't his only. He also put together the Farian Corp, which was essentially members of Toto, a couple members of Boney M, but they did like a charitable, thing that was very successful. Think of here in America when we did like USA for Africa, it was that sort of thing. So he's got Meatloaf under his belt. Stevie Wonder had recorded in his studio. He did some mixing. He had a lot of things under his belt. So they're looking for their break. They meet, even just being invited to go meet Frank Farian in his office, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and we know, let me get some of my Robin Fab. I know I can get my Robin Fab pictures back up here, and I will. So so he played for them. So this is where it gets a little bit, so he's clearly jaded. This whole thing with Bobby Farrell went until Bobby Farrell died. And then still there was, his daughter was outspoken in the press. She didn't get too specific, which leads me to think there was an NDA involved. Even after his passing, she didn't do that. So perhaps fear that Farian would sue the estate is my guess. But he plays for them the song without the lyrics. So it had like the, that part, but it did not have the lead vocals yet. And he left them with the impression that they were just going, we're going to sign, and they're going to be singing it later. Again, had them sign a contract pretty quickly. Both of them did not have money. They roommated together. Fab refers to it, or Rob refers to it over and over in the infamous press conference that we went over in depth on the first discussion, referred over and over to how like desolate they were, how desperate they were, like having to steal food. They lived in the projects, and that it was not a safe place because the projects where they lived did not include, and we talked about this, the stereotype here is completely opposite of what it was there at that time period. Being African American there, and Rob is, mixed, for those that don't remember how incredibly hot he was. There you go. But he was different in the area that he lived in. He was adopted and he was mixed race, and he was the only one. He said, it's like there was not other people of color around him. So it was an unsafe place. And here comes this person who's well respected. Well, he was worked with Stevie Wonder, like songs from Superstitious. You know what I mean? Like, this is like big time. Toto, Meatloaf, Boney M. They signed it. And they were told they were going to get to sing. And that never did happen. It was Frank Farian who outed the whole situation. He rushed to do a press conference before them. After they had won the Grammy, that's when they decided they were going to ask for more money. Much like Bobby Farrell, the guys started to realize, like, hey, he's making a hot penny off of us, and yet we're the ones kind of in demand, and we're forced to keep his secret. And I dispelled last time a common myth, and I think, again, it's human empathetic nature that we're like, oh my gosh, those poor people whose voice it really was. No, they all knew, and they were all fine with it. They were all fine with it. The one that wasn't was let go right away and replaced with someone who was. They didn't want to be touring. They didn't want all that mess. They just wanted to sing. And they were so excited. One of the backup singers, it's a set of twins, by the way, but she's like, to this day, she's like, I want my Grammy back. She's like, the Milli Vanilli Grammy, that wasn't Rob and Fab's only. That was like, this was a unit. We were a unit. And I think that surprises most people. They didn't feel like ripped off or gypped. The only people who felt that way were Rob and Fab, who kept getting strung along and promised. Well, what happened is when they found out that second album had already been recorded, Rob was the one who spoke fluent German. Mm-hmm. And he, and Fab's was broken enough that he says that, Rob had to translate for him, but he's like, there's just was no getting over the fact. He's like, I knew Rob very well. I could look at, we didn't have to talk to each other, and I could look at him and tell what he was feeling. But he's like, I was watching him and even not understanding most of what they were talking about because it was going so fast. He's like, I could see Rob was pissed, and the way that meeting ended was bad. Well, Frank left that meeting where Rob was simply asking for more money. I mean, essentially, he was paying their rent. They were still sharing a house, by the way. It was, sure, it was in like Beverly Hills, things like that. But when were they ever there? He kept him on the road all the time. So he's paying for, the food and but that's all coming out of their pay. What's supposed to be their pay? It's like part of the compensation kind of thing. And any time that they protested, he would say, you have to pay that back then. You have to reimburse then. So when Rob gave him an ultimatum, Farian went, fuck you. Mm-hmm. Scheduled the thing, and essentially got away with a room full of press with blaming them. How, as the producer, can somebody even convince anybody, let alone a group of like what are supposed to be members of the media who are supposed to be unbiased and reporting, asking questions? How do you convince I mean, I still don't know. I still don't know how this shook out the way it did, you guys. Because how? Are they setting up their own? I mean, so no, really? They try to say Clive Davis didn't know. Bullshit. And that was debunked. But it's like, he did. He got out in front of it before them. And let's be real, right? This is a guy who was major in the industry, worked with people like Clive Davis. I mean, it's like if he works with artists, if he's mixing for artists, if artists are coming through his studio, people didn't want to burn their bridges with him. They didn't want to be denied access to the next big act, you know? And so sadly, that's the way that worked out. Now, again, going back to what Outlander said about it's all about the money. Yup, it sure is. Because he had a second album already recorded. But now he doesn't have Rob and Fab. And he did that. He did that. Right? He wasn't going to risk. He wasn't going to give Rob more money. He wasn't going to give Fab more money. He was not going to negotiate the way that he had with Bobby Farrell. So he ousted the whole thing that he put together and somehow came out smelling like the rose. And they, you know, scammed the nation. I mean, it was just weird. It's weird looking back on it, right? Because it just was not accurate. But he still had, he has the second album, right? So this is what caused this whole showdown anyway, is the singing, them finding out that he's already recorded the second album with the same, you know, we are not singing on it either. He'd kind of stood in their way from getting a U.S. management, something they were able to do in the course of all that touring and all that. So in the kind of, you know, year and a half-ish that they were like major in the United States, they did acquire their own management who left his executive position to step in and manage them after he read their contract. Because he said it was that bad. They're getting screwed. And he felt strongly that all they needed was some vocal coaching. Like, they needed, some work in terms of their English and singing in English. But they had the voices. And it's the first time anyone advocated for him. It's the first time they found out what they signed.
Yeah.
So you just have to think of the lead up to this. So yeah, I bet it was a fucking showdown, right? But he wasn't going to negotiate. And instead he blew up the whole scheme that he put together and somehow managed to push it off on them. So he's got the second album. So he decides he's going to push out the real Milli Vanilli, okay? So all these singers that didn't want to do all the touring and stuff like that, well, you know, they want their album out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like listening to them talk. I mean, they all have a lot of empathy for Rob and Fab. They never had any ill will. But I mean, this is show business. You know what I mean? So when they're offered this opportunity, they decide to do it. But guess what? Now he wants to bring in another person because, again, you know, they are still the same dudes that we talked about before, that he felt like he needed a Rob and Fab to front in order for it to be marketable. Let me show you what the real Milli Vanilli ended up looking like. If you can pick out the stand-in, okay? There we go. Why is that so big? So funny. Just dead.
Known as ghosts.
What, baby? So funny. I just can't believe. I mean, it's like the guy never had repercussions. I mean, doesn't this mirror things on YouTube right now? Never had. I mean, in fact, he prospered from it. It's so sad.
What are you looking?
I am pulling up the real Milli Vanilli so they can see. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you guys. So can you pick out the? It's just so ridiculous. So first of all, remember what I said about backup singers, right? Have a good look, right? So I will tell you right now. There were two of them, not one. He still did not want to put a white person on this album cover. So she did sing live. In the live show, she did indeed sing. Okay. Still not the right one. Okay. So I guess I was almost trick questioning because there's two things here.
Yeah.
Hold on. Where did it go? Oh my God, this is so annoying. Anyway, okay, so there it is. Gina Muhammad, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's Ray Horton, okay, which is this guy in the middle. Has a little bit of, Robin Fab's vibe. Okay. These other three are the guys. Okay. So that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Shaw over on I guess it'd be the viewers, right? And then John Davis on the other side. Or it's Brad Howell, sorry. Brad Howell was the one who also, by the way, does the composing, and he's the only one who gets royalties these days. From all the session singers who by the way, like signed off for that. I mean, a lot of them were really didn't like the way it shook out, and they allowed themselves to be bought out of future rights. But he did have some things to do with the actual music production. So anyway, so Ray Horton was brought in, was not on the album. Now again, in the wake of this, like the immediate wake of this, he made damn sure everybody there sang, but it didn't change that the twins' backing vocals are still playing. And he didn't even, he still had the same like stand-in actor, model dancer girls pretending to be, he just didn't learn. He didn't care. And in the meantime, Rob and Fab do their own album, you guys, and it sold 2,000 copies. 2,000. Okay, that's not an error on my part. 2,000. They were absolutely destroyed over this. They took the brunt of it. It was so gross. And I'm going to pull up a graphic. Honey, can you pull and share the URL to the first one and put it in chat? The first video.
Which?
My first video on this.
Oh, okay.
This is a graphic that I used in the first one, but it's showing all the other people that were doing the same thing at the time. Okay, so starting from when Girl You Know It's True first hit, right? And then it's kind of showing this progression. Black Box was another one who was we played an excellent demo because in the wake of Milli Vanilli, they tried to have her actually sing and it was horrible. Martha Wash was like a pioneer in changing the laws here in the United States. And shortly after Milli Vanilli, when I say shortly, I mean like within a couple months, one of her lawsuits went through and it became required to credit the actual vocalist here in the United States, something that had been in effect in the UK. Another reason why when people say there's no way Clive Davis and nobody knew, right? It was this big thing they were pulling off No, because in the UK, the proper singers were credited because that's the law over there. So maybe it was missed, you know, or whatever, but there's no way, not by industry professionals. There's just no way. But it's showing all of this. And then it kind of shows too how, I mean, no. Right after it, okay, so you see November 20th, the same freaking month is when Everybody Dance Now came out. Another one that Martha Wash had to sue over, and CNC Music Factory absolutely defended it until the moment they lost the case. Sony, on the other hand, was really quick to settle with her, gave her an album deal, financed her first tour. They did not want to lose Martha Wash because if you remember Everybody Dance Now, her girl can sang, and they're like, no, we need her, and she could probably sell on her own. You know, let's quit having her fuck around with all these producers that are just stealing her stuff, you know. Let me see here. Oh, it doesn't have. Who was the rapper that we were talking about last time? Now I'm not going to remember. But I was like, I loved that song. I had no idea. It's Nat King K. I can't remember. Technotronic.
Yeah.
Pump Up the Jam. They were ready. So that wasn't a Frank Farian group, by the way. But this was common practice. So that's what I mean. He, even after Caught, right, made this big thing. But that was his design. I mean, this to me feels like he wanted revenge. And he used his power in the industry to make sure that it happened. I'm going to say something that's going to be confusing to people who don't know the story. You know, they sold 2,000 albums. Okay. By the way, the real Milli Vanilli did not do well either. Okay. Frank Farian was having a little bit of a rough time, clearly, but think back to what happened with Boney M and Bobby Farrell. He reapproached Rob and Fab to help them with another album after theirs failed. And they accepted. That album never saw the light of day, sadly, because Rob passed away. Yeah. But I mean, let it sink in. You know what I mean? I mean, after everything, it's degrees. It's a matter of degree. I don't know. While Frank Farian wasn't publicly the pariah, it definitely did put a little scar on him. Because Boney M was in there too. Now he's got a reputation. And so it's easy to see how Rob and Fab were kind of desperate. I don't want to say desperate. Okay, maybe that's not the right word. The defeated. There's the word I'm looking at. Defeated. Yeah. And having Frank reapproach them and say, okay, I'll let you sing. Oh, thanks, Frank. Because you listened to our 2000 copy. You know, would you watch us on our city? They went on our. So they didn't go on Arsenio Hall when they were Milli Vanilli, you guys, because there's a requirement they do live performances. They went back after when they were releasing their album as Rob and Fab. Yeah. And they were great. So.
You've done a bit of research on this.
Yeah, I have.
Haven't you, good?
Yeah.
Don't do your thing.
You're so weird. Stop it. You're so funny.
Don't keep doing your thing.
Yeah. Well, it threw me off not having my pictures. But it's taking forever in StreamYard. I don't want to keep making everybody wait.
Yeah, that's because anime is being streamed elsewhere.
Yes, well, that's probably it. So, yeah. He continued to produce Boney M. He worked with LaBouche. He formed LaBouche. One of the Boney M songs got made into a musical, and he became the president and then the owner of MCI Records, which is his status today. Still alive, recording duets with his daughter, who, like I said, is actually a very good singer. And I am going to play just a little tiny bit of this, right? So this is him now in his older age. But this is also his daughter. So, of course, he's producing his daughter.
That thing in 2021?
I don't know.
Cherish.
Yes. It's Cool and the Gang's Cherish that they...
Right, and that's in 2021. So that's...
Yeah, here. I'm just going to play a little...
Cherish your sons and daughters. Cherish your sisters and brothers. Cherish your husband.
That's his daughter. And him harmonizing with her.
Cherish the love we have. We should cherish the...
So, in the end, like, it is what it is.
There's him and his daughter.
Yeah. So he really, aside from sort of a dip in business, I mean, so he never got back to, he didn't have people like Stevie Wonder, like, rushing in, or Meatloaf, like that kind of caliber artist. But it doesn't change that he put together artists that did well, and rose in the ranks of the music industry, clear up to president of a well-respected record label, and was rich enough eventually to buy the whole thing. Money that was made off of Boney M and Milli Vanilli, and, so... It infuriates me. I can't even lie. I just can't even lie, you guys. To this day. And I told people how this came up. I was literally like in 7-Eleven, Wawa, I can't remember which one, but a Milli Vanilli song came on the Muzak station. And I'm like, God, I wonder what ever like happened. I'm like, I hadn't thought about them in years. But it got me to like think about it. And I was like, God, it's kind of messed up what happened. Like, why is everyone like, and I was like, no, there's no way they did that without a record label backing them. And I never even heard, I didn't know the name Frank Farian until then. And the more I dug, the more I was like, ugh. I mean, the first thing was just this because I loved Milli Vanilli. Well, and I didn't really care, by the way, when I found out I wasn't that. I'm like, who cares? Right? That was like the MTV era. And likewise, it's like, no, I'm like the performing is like, I mean, it's just, you can't have one without the other. There was a time, is 2016 when, or maybe earlier, 2016, 17, something like that, when Fab toured with John Davis, who was one of the studio singers, and they did a tour. It's called the Milli Vanilli Experience. Face meets voice is what they said, right? I played Fab's singing on here before, right? But even at the press conference, you could hear, I mean, it's like they both, so by the way, Rob had like this bass in his voice, and it literally was a dialect issue, in my opinion, right? He could have used training, but in the end, he's singing English songs. Like, give him a German song, and I bet that would have been a little bit different, but he still didn't sound bad. He could harmonize, but it's like, no, by the time, I mean, it's sad to me, by the way, that album never saw the light of day. That's something that in the back of my mind, I'm going, it's out there somewhere. It never got released because Rob passed, but I wonder, especially if the documentary and the movie do what I hope and what I think it'll do. I think it's a different time. It's a different generation. And, you know, I think people are more receptive. I mean, nowadays, I mean, listen, this was before all the like Britney Spears and Justin Bieber, you know, all the auto-tune singers and mumble rappers. And, you know, no offense to people that like that, but it's like, you know, our definition of quality music has kind of changed. And nowadays it's not uncommon to see someone who can't sing all that great, have all kinds of little tweaks and tunes. And in the end, if you go to see their show, they're almost always lip syncing anyway. I can think of many artists, you know what I mean? There's also ghost singers, and I talked about that last time too. This practice has gone on. People like Jennifer Lopez, TLC. There's a plethora of people to this day that will have quote unquote ghost singers who will do things like sing portions of songs that have notes that they can't hit. And live, that is, I mean, it's, you know, it's a sleight of hand. Everyone remembers Katy Perry playing the flute or whatever, and the track starts going and she's still holding it.
Yeah, she didn't even blow it into it.
Right. You know, it's like these kind of things still do happen. It's just that this was like a whole thing, but it's kind of like, I don't know. If you believe the puppets are moving on their own and then you find out that they're puppets, I mean, so who's the trickster? I mean, I say the puppet master who's putting on the show and collecting the money. But that was never done. I mean, I don't know. I'm really interested to see how everything goes.
Well, it's kind of funny
my understanding is
Two Dog Night started screaming at me because I didn't have their tracks hooked up correctly.
Right.
They were like, "This isn't gonna fucking work.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell is this?" You know, and I was like, "Hey, dude, this is what they gave me to give to you." And then the guy comes over the radio and goes, "No, you give them the adapter to hook the cable up right." So we hook it all up. As I was walking off the center of the field at that game, I was like, "Well, you're the dumbasses that aren't even playing. What the fuck are you yelling at me for, you Two Dog Night ass?"
That's funny. Well, the other thing though is, and I can't remember where I heard it, so this is just, it's a question I have, frankly. I would really like to know, but I feel like I heard somewhere that Farian is involved somehow with the documentary. So I'm hoping it doesn't get slanted. You know what I mean? Because I know Fab is too. So hopefully it shakes out in such a manner that, you know, to me, it kind of makes me worry that it might lessen the redemption that these two deserve. Especially, I mean, listen, Rob is not here. His legacy deserves to have the real story more common knowledge. Fab is an amazing performer and a very like visionary, artistic kind of dude who deserves to be remembered for something more than quote unquote lip syncing. Neither of those guys ever just got up there and lip synced. I'm sorry. And they fought the whole time. They were performing the whole time, fighting and believing that they were going to get their chance to sing. They wanted to earn that spotlight, you know, themselves. So, pisses me off. Anyway, I have not looked at chat at all, you guys. I'm so sorry. Let me close some of my tabs. Maybe that'll help this to get going. Oh, Izzy. She's making biscuits and getting stuck. Okay, yeah. They're at least starting to close faster. So the one thing, you guys, though, so I'm going to come in and we can do a discussion. I might even open the panel. What do you guys think about the, so I don't know. I was surprised when I found out that they decided to work with them again. She's stuck. Oh no, she.
Yeah. Time to wrap it up.
He looks so young. Yeah. Yeah, he totally, like, he hasn't aged. And he's so, you guys, he's so positive after everything that he has been through in life. He's very wise and he's very positive, and he is, you know, he's here on YouTube. He goes live every Sunday, and he is kind of a, describe it. He's very into like positive energy and helping people see the positives of things. Oh, see here, while we were here, he released a video. So I will go ahead and put this in the chat if you'd like to check him out. He's extraordinarily humble, positive. Like he likes to talk about how he's grown from all of this and what he learned. I think the saddest thing for me too, by the way, is having myself worked in the music business, and somebody who worked with new artists, right? So my primary business was Crisis PR, but I also developed bands as like kind of the side thing and would get them to a certain place, and then I'd essentially sell them to a record label who had management that could handle bigger things, you know? It's a cautionary tale to artists looking for their break. These kind of things happen a lot. Rarely do you see a first contract that shouldn't be looked at by a lawyer and is usually crap, you know, and a lot of times the artist will take the crap in order to be signed. And then they renegotiate, you know. This whole thing of not renegotiating, you don't hear about it that much. But they also usually are the ones singing, you know? Yeah, Outlander, absolutely. Well, and like I said, I'm hoping, you know, I just, first of all, I can't wait. You know, and that's for the biopic too, guys. It's like, so that, you know, when done right, I mean, think about Rocket Man. You know, there's been really great, when they're done right, they're great. And, you know, the main thing for me is I'm just hoping that it becomes just more common knowledge. I talked about how, like, I was like, there has to be some like dance challenge or something over on TikTok. And if you look up Milli Vanilli, it's like these young 20s people trying to teach the new generation what to pull a Milli Vanilli is. And they've made it into some verb that means, you know, like posing. And that's sad to me. That's upsetting. That's indicative of how little reach the actual story has made it. All right, I'm going to put the link in. If anybody wants to come up and discuss further. He'd be good. Hey, Wyoming, everyone that came in when I didn't see you, I apologize. I have to learn how to just do like pre-recorded stuff, I think, for the Saturday shows. It gets really hard. But see, I want to have the discussion part too. I just having like a pre-made part that has like everything play, and that way I can chat, and then when it's time to open panel, I can do that. I think that's a better format. It is sad, isn't it, Wyoming? I mean, literally, I'm just going like, you know, these guys deserve credit, and I am gonna go ahead and just risk the stream for a second. Yeah, let's do this. I'm gonna prove my point a little bit here because I just feel like it fits. So This is one of their early performances. Let me stop sharing and I'll show you where they landed. So it's not playing in like
time with the music.
Well, that totally defeats what I'm trying to show.
That they got better.
Which is that they were freaking flawless. Mm-hmm. And it was high end. It was like that every damn song. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's got to be because he's on it.
No, yours always does that when you kind of play and stream at the same time.
Does yours do it? I just think it's a good way to close. I'm going to put it in back office if you want to try. Or in the back chat. Oh, can I do that? Can I put it in? Yeah, private chat. Don't worry, guys. We're not telling secrets. There you go. Maybe you can try and see. Dance and talk over it, yeah. Oh, yes. I had the tape, too. I wish I still did, actually. Hold on. Let me get Outlander up here. Hello.
Hey, boy.
Is it better than it was on mine?
Isolated from everybody else in the band, too, no less.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, the cost of their housings being held over their head, they're not even there. Yeah. I mean, think about it, a worldwide tour.
Yeah.
180 days, and you're doing 89 shows, which more or less comes to a show every other day.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're never home. I mean, this was a whirlwind for them. It's like, it's just, you know, but this is what they're doing it's like.
And they're here covering their life costs, you know, just to live, you know.
Yeah. And left with nothing. You know what I mean? It's like that. I mean, the second they stopped performing is when they stopped getting a paycheck. They weren't entitled, you know, to this. Never have they been entitled
to any of the off of every album. Every album they took their names off of, right?
Yeah.
To get the money. So there was just one album, or I believe it was one track even that they were even earning from.
Yeah.
And it's a sad, sad story. It really is.
No, and it's just gone on for so long. You know what I mean? It's crazy to me that we're all this time later, you know, decades have passed, and it's still sort of not seen for what it actually was. And that's not for, you know, Fab not having spoken out. And you know, he's done interviews, and I feel like he's been really careful. You know, he's been choosy about what. But I mean, we're talking Oprah and stuff. You know what I mean? Like people, I feel like people should know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like this weird you know, this like kind of iconic scandal in music history that.
Well, I think that with parsing these things in the past are the ways that you learn the truth about things. I don't know that history is actually always written by the winners.
No, it's like the media.
Yeah, you're right.
And this sold a hell of a lot of magazines and tabloids, and you know, ad revenue on news programs. I mean, it's just the story wasn't as sexy if if it's Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was the media at the same time that did good and did bad.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's very true.
You
That's
know,
very
and
Yeah.
and because Rob just
true.
sunk under
Yeah.
that much, he couldn't deal with it all. You know, he just wanted to escape it all. Where Fab, you know, he was
Mhm.
struggling, but
Yeah.
I mean, as far as I knew, Fab was receiving help where Rob wasn't.
So
Uh,
they both initially went to treatment.
Hmm.
So before they released
Hmm.
their album,
Yeah.
they both went to treatment.
Hmm.
Fab stayed sober, Rob didn't.
Yeah.
And Fab's been quoted before, and I've heard it in a couple different things, and he always used the same word. He said Rob couldn't handle the humiliation.
Yeah, his ego, his ego.
Yeah.
He was
yeah.
that strong with his ego. You know, he was the band leader in a way because
Yeah.
you could tell in the interviews and everything, you know, Rob took
Yes.
lead on that, didn't
Mhm.
he? And
Yes.
everything, you know.
Yes.
And
Well, you
and
can tell that Rob is more of like an introspective kind of, and Rob
Mhm.
or Fab, and Rob was like the outgoing.
Yeah,
And so he was
introvert,
doing,
outrovert. Yep.
yeah, and he was doing the business negotiations and things
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
Um, it's such a shame, and so it's too bad, and it's like, and then I don't know. I mean, part of me thinks too.
What does it think?
It makes me wonder, how Rob felt about working with Frank again.
Yeah. This documentary, I think, had to have happened with Frank, or else it probably wouldn't have been released.
Yeah, since
So,
he's still alive. Yeah.
yeah, you
I feel like
know,
I heard it somewhere, and I'm just going
and
like,
excluding, but I'm really hoping that there's going to be a reconciliation from Frank's side to
yeah.
admit his mistakes, because that's one thing that Frank never did. He
No,
never admitted his mistake.
no. Well, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
And
And the
even,
boys
yeah,
did.
even with Boney M, I'm like, it is so hard to
Yeah.
find any kind of quotes from him on it at all. But
Yeah.
it's also hard to find bad press on it. And I'm
Yeah.
going, how did that shake
How did that
out?
come to term?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost the same thing, only it's even a little more ratcheted up because it was him singing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow. I mean, it's just he got off scot-free with all of it. And so, yeah, it would be great if he could, admit to some of it, because I don't know. Like I said, Rob isn't gonna get to see where the story's told.
I think sooner or later he's going to have to admit to the public that he's sorry, you know, because he's that dependent on the public's money, and either he does it, or you know, his money goes under.
Mhm.
Well, I think his reputation could
Yeah,
take.
that
This is
too.
where I was like, his
Yeah.
reputation stands to take a hit
Mhm.
because documentaries like this are streaming the way they do and worldwide and all that. I
Yeah.
mean, they make a difference these days. I mean, they solve crimes and stuff. You know what I mean? They make an impact.
Yes.
And
We saw it with Michael Jackson, didn't we?
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
kind of like. But there's just this piece of me where I'm like, God, if he has too much of a say or he has any sort of creative control, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll nix anything that implies how much he hurt these guys on purpose for greed.
Yeah. What gets me the most is I see this dream. I mean, I have a group of producers who have the same dream as Rob and Fab have, right? And they got
Yeah.
this perception, oh, they're going to be this and this and this, you know? And I'm like, do you really want to be up there like that? You know how
Yeah.
much pressure is on you. You know how much responsibility you take. You know, we look at stuff like Ariana Grande, what she's been through, you know, with the massacre in Manchester and everything else along
Mhm.
with music and stuff, what goes along with it, just as much as the good stuff, the bad stuff, you know.
Right.
They have sometimes no idea of what they're getting into. And I'm like, dude, get yourself a job, just
Yeah.
a regular job. You'd probably be better off in life, you know, just to score
Mhm.
up or play the lottery. You might even have more of a chance playing the lottery than you do
Yeah.
in this game.
Well, and that's what's crazy is like the only thing, and the other thing that breaks my heart is that Rob was conveying a lot of wisdom at that press conference.
Mhm.
And because of some of the reporters, I mean, I kind of spelled out too how it was sort of a divided room by the end. And there was a certain segment that were definitely like nasty. That probably the half that had been to Frank Farian's press conference the week before. Just nasty and combative. And then because of, you know, his some of the words that it's just English wasn't his first language, you know? So it's like, but what he was trying to convey, I mean, what he was saying is like, yes, it's exciting when you've never held a check and suddenly someone's putting a check in your hand. But if I could tell kids you know, and by that, he means if he could go back and tell himself, work at McDonald's for a couple months so you can have a lawyer look at that contract. Because you don't want to end up like this. And I'm like, there's the cautionary tale that never got to be told.
You lend them money. There's one subject. What is loaning money? And then expecting that money back right away. That's nothing more than a loan shark.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. He took advantage of them. In this day and age, that the laws weren't the same back then either, you know? But it's like in this day and age, at least here in America, once they got over here, I mean, that contract wouldn't have even been enforceable because he verbally told them something different. It was very easy to prove that they didn't know what they were signing. And, you know, there was enough evidence around that he had made them promises that he didn't keep, you know, so he in a way swindled them.
Yeah. Well, Rob flipped out in the studio when he heard he was going to they were going to lip sync. He said, they were like, no, Frank, no, we're not doing, you know, I wouldn't want to know what he said in there. I think Fab was just being quiet in the background and listening to Rob, you know, taking the lead because he represented both of them in a way.
Yeah. Well, and to first find out that like, hey, we're just going to need you to, well, and then he kind of, and Frank passed that off. He passed that off like, well, I mean, you know, we already have it recorded. I mean, we just need you to do some touring. It's just this one, you know, and kind of left this impression like, we'll fix it later or something. We'll get you incorporated. And then it becomes, a whole album's already done.
Yeah.
And by then they're getting
they're so deep.
Yeah.
They can't pull a lot of it. They owe so much money.
Can you imagine well, because they said they wanted out. When they found out the whole album was the deal, they wanted out. And that's
probably where Frank gave him more money.
That's where he said, you'll have to pay me back for that check I handed you. And they couldn't. They had, listen, you guys, they had used their money, you know, to kind of, but one of the investments they made was their hair. You know what I mean? Fab explains how everybody that they could think of, they were thinking about like the icons of music here just here in America, because that was their goal. And they're like Marilyn Monroe, Elvis, Bob Marley. It's their hair, right? So they wanted they thought of the hair, and so they invested the money into their dream. Yeah. And here comes him saying, "Oh, you don't want to do it? Okay, that's fine. I'll just need my money back."
Yeah, I mean, Crafton could relate to this, you know, with the music industry. What they do is they get you to sign, and then they loan you money. This money has to be paid back if they don't do the earnings. You know,
it's all recoupable. And then when I was working with Eric Gales every year on his website, when he would come out with a new album, I finally got a copy of the contracts that he was signing with Shrapnel Records. They were actually charging him money for 1,000 copies of his own record at $5 a pop, and with the advisement that they were to not be duplicated in any way, and any further copies that he wanted to take on the road and sell at his own merch table had to be purchased directly from them.
And that's not uncommon. That's not.
So he's buying his own record.
That's not uncommon, even for very large worldwide.
No, I know it's
artists.
not uncommon. I'm saying that's a part that it's all in that same recoupable.
Every grape on the freaking craft table comes out of.
I would say right now of a band who I was working with, and I'm not going to say their names. It's happened to me to say, well, I was involved in that, and I'm not even going to mention it because I'd have a lawyer right on my foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing too. I did crisis PR, so like all of
what happened though.
Yeah.
Can you say what happened without saying who?
Well, what happened was they did the same, you know, buying their own records and stuff. They weren't even told about it in the beginning, and everything else, and every chart pushing thing you could think of along with it. Involved in a big scandal, and it all got busted up. I went to the press because I got screwed over.
Right.
And I told the whole story. I was on the second paper.
Oh no.
I was like on the German's biggest paper. I've never been in the news, never, ever. And I would never, ever put myself in the news. And I felt very uncomfortable doing it.
Right.
But I felt that this was something the public had to know, that nobody gets to be a victim of stuff like this, you know. But the band basically, it's I can't even put it all together even anymore because it's that screwed up.
It really is. Well, and artists, if they're not careful, artists get really, really screwed over. It's like, so there's here on YouTube, they did a thing on NSYNC. Well, it was on Lou Pearlman, so it's NSYNC and the boy bands and things like that. But it was explaining how NSYNC had been like #1, top of the charts, and they go to this dinner where they're getting their first check.
Yeah.
And it was something like $5,000 or $10,000. And this is after they've sold millions of records and been touring for a year. #1 act, like in the topping the charts, $10,000. And suddenly every single thing they've ever done is on this just list of, I mean, every meal, every activity that they thought, you know, that Lou was taking them out to. I mean, that's how it works. And that's not uncommon.
Unfortunately.
These like diva-like behaviors. They have to have this, and this backstage. Well, they also pay for that, and that.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember when I was once doing cleaning, I had Montel Jordan's chicken. I'm kidding you not.
That's funny.
They left his chicken his frozen chicken. We took it home and started making chicken with it.
See? And that's probably what happened. He probably brought his own frozen chicken to his show.
Yes.
He's like, fuck you, I'm not paying $50.
Yeah, that's what he did. He did. It was delicious, you know, because it was American chicken. I was like, yeah man, American chicken.
Yeah. This is the behind the scenes stuff, you guys, that you don't hear about. It's like, no. Like, you hear about all the real wacky stuff. I only want green M&Ms. Well, all them packs of M&Ms that some other poor schmo had to go through to find the green ones, right? Well, they paid for all those packs. There's nothing for free.
Live. What? Yes, I'm live. I'll be there in a second, okay?
Aww.
Sorry, my daughter's wanting me.
Okay.
She always
my son poked in earlier too. But he's like, the dryer open. He's got all his laundry from school. So but we'll see. I'm very excited for everything coming out this year, though.
Oh yeah. It's going to be a new. I'm hoping a new door for Fab, because I'm sort of like he's soul searching. You know, still. You know, even with his music, he kept performing, but you see him doing these lives. What makes him do these lives and stuff is him wanting to go back to somewhere where he's picked off, where he stopped to pick up from, you know, to continue.
I agree. I feel like, you know, I don't know, people, media, you know, but even just generally, I mean, fans kind of felt betrayed or whatever was the sort of stuff you see, at least in the media. I don't know how much of that was true, but I think the sales of their next album were indicative at least of that.
Oh yeah.
But I think that, you know, I think Fab likes connecting with people. I think he misses the people.
Yeah. Well, Newmark started doing a show in something called the Fernsehgarten, which is sort of like a TV garden translated.
Yeah.
And they really flopped mega, and people just didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
They wanted to see Rob and Fab, but it wasn't presented anymore. And that was the end of Milli Vanilli right there. And then where actually they shouldn't have been able to even pick up the trademark Milli Vanilli, in my opinion. Because like we had said, Rob and Fab had made Milli Vanilli, no matter whether they sang it or not, they performed it.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel like one can't exist without the other.
Their shows was like a complete workout. I mean, it wasn't even like each song.
But it was good. Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean.
Was complete working. I mean, they had to stay in shape to do that.
Yes. And as I looked through things, you know, these other kind of YouTube things that talked about it, specifically the ones that would go kind of negative with it, they always seem to use the same footage, like the same little snippet from the press conference. They that first video that I was showing, they would show that. And I'm going, well, gosh, if they ran around the whole time being that, I mean, that was one of their first times performing it. So yes,
Yeah.
they hadn't got the knack yet that like you're pretending you're singing, so you need to hold the mic closer.
Yeah.
Do the dance moves, but you could see
Yeah.
they didn't even have all their choreography fully memorized yet.
Yeah. I mean,
Man.
you have to ask yourself, you know, when they did continue, you know, Newmarks, when they did continue the Milli Vanilli legacy, tried to continue it,
Yeah.
was there an attempt made by the press to basically to kind of like disassociate Rob and Fab from the whole Milli Vanilli project, because the way it was pushed, you get what I'm saying? Oh, these are the new singers. The way this propaganda came out, it was exploited like the biggest scandal in the world, you know, which it was, because the press had worked on that, you know, to get that out like
No,
that.
and it kind of was. It was shocking, right? But it's like, shouldn't the story have been the dude who's just done this for the second time and gotten caught?
Yeah. And where was the investment to continue with Rob and Fab?
Right.
Why didn't
Well, and
why didn't they want to work with Rob and Fab? They could sing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where it's like, you know, so their manager, I think, is fascinating. It's just it was harder to hone in on to make too much of the story. But like, he felt so strongly about their talent and how they had been exploited that he left his executive job at a record company.
I didn't even know that.
To manage them.
Yeah.
You know, so he was very confident. And now, unfortunately, they got involved with a label for that project. That was pretty much already starting to go under, and they didn't know that. So it's like, I mean, they had like this string of just bad luck. So there was no promotion because there wasn't any money for it, because they were going under and weren't upfront with that, you know. So it's too bad, but it's like, you know, so that's what makes me so sad, is I'm like, you know, the last time when they had this chance to kind of put it out there,
I'll be there in a second.
Like Rob had to go. I mean, it's like that, but they both had to live through going like only 2,000 people cared enough to buy that album, and you can't even find it now. I'm like looking on the streaming platforms; it's not even there. It's sad.
I got one.
Do you? Oh, that's amazing.
Yes, I had to go through I think it was a type of media distributor somehow here, and he said, "Oh, it's hard to find." And I'm like, I want it for my car, because I put a new CD player in my car to have it.
Yeah, I was checking all the streaming platforms, and I'm like, and that's interesting too, because I'm like, I don't know, I wonder. And like, and you know, he's done the live, Fab's done the live shows where he,
great.
He carries all this himself.
Great.
He sounds freaking amazing. He sounds amazing, and he absolutely does such a great. And I'm like, God, but there's not anywhere you can get that either. It's like you have to come here to YouTube or whatever. And it's like, I'm like.
Well, did you know that the Newmarks, when they performed that that TV show, they lip synced?
Oh, really? See, I mean, it's just so, I mean, it's funny, but it's not. It's like, why was this one such a big deal? I just don't get it. I don't get it. But
well, we have to ask ourselves how many out there are doing the lip syncing, you know, and why is the media sort of like putting up with it? Why are we being sort of like deceived?
Right. Because this definitely didn't change the practice. I mean, that's what I found real fascinating about Frank Farian, is that, I mean, literally on the heels of it, he was confident enough to again put people in that had nothing to do with what was on the album.
I think he'd still do it if he was 500 years old, you know.
I think he would too. It was definitely a habit in his life, and it's just interesting from a psychological level. I'm fascinated with him, because I'm like, you know, I think he probably that initial failure that he felt, because he's clearly passionate about music.
Yeah, he wanted, like I said, he wanted, like you had mentioned about his music, you know, the type of music. Germany wasn't ready for that type of music as a culture shock. It was introduced to Germany, and Germany was basically shocked, you know. We have to ask ourselves the question, why was Germany shocked? You know, I think I don't want to make an opinion on this, and I don't want to I know, because I don't want to dig up old wounds, you know, because but it sort of like leads me to believe
Yeah.
whatever, you know.
Yeah. Well, and it lends credence, by the way, to the things that Rob said
Mhm.
about how hard it was growing
Mhm.
up there. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And
yeah.
being, the feeling
Oh, yeah.
out of place. You know?
We didn't have many, like Germany didn't have many black people. Like,
Yeah.
we did have a lot of black people, but they were a minority,
Mm-hmm.
and you know,
Yeah. Well, and just the being adopted and just it's just
that
all in all,
that
my
also.
heart breaks for him because I'm like there was so much disappointment in his life, and in the same token, it's like it
Well, there
sounds
were parts of his family that actually turned
yeah
against Rob, which was
yeah
sad.
that's
Mm.
very sad.
Except for his sister. His sister
Yeah, his
didn't.
sister has always been an advocate. Yeah,
Yeah.
and she's a cool girl. I mean, it's like I've watched
Mhm.
her interviews and things too, and it's like,
Mhm.
but look at how positive Fab. It's so sad. And when you think about it, they're like yin and yang. It's like
Yeah.
and it's very obvious. Like he can't hardly talk about Rob, and you can just see he doesn't. He gets emotional,
Yeah.
and
But that's
when
why he has that, doesn't he? He uses that symbolism.
yeah
He's got
yeah
them 14 symbols.
yeah
He's
yeah
had to develop that himself, you know. That's amazing, you know, to just
hmm
sit there and self-analyze and then come up with ways to help yourself. That is
hmm
such a recovery. I
yeah.
mean,
It's
and then
admirable. I mean, it's just
admirable,
yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
very admirable, and that's why I'm like I absolutely mean it when I say it's like Rob's looking down on him and just so
Yeah.
proud.
Yeah,
He's doing it for both of them now.
yeah. I could really sometimes sense the pain in him and
Yes.
the remorse in it all, you know, sometimes probably in his head going, why have
Yeah.
I ever did this, you know, but I had to do this. I had to sacrifice this, you
Yeah.
know, because the world needed music and how important music is to the world.
hmm
Mm.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that isn't talked about a lot is that Rob has a son,
Oh,
and,
yes.
and
Yeah.
I would just love to see the story
Turn to a
be seen for what it is, um,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sort of
for
like
his
sort of like
legacy.
sort of like John Lennon's son, huh?
hmm
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just
Mm.
these guys were not these horrible, manipulative
No.
liars. You know what I mean?
No.
They felt guilty every
On the
single day.
contrary. On the
Absolutely.
contrary, they
Yes.
were the ones who were sitting there in the press report,
Yeah.
and they were saying sorry.
Yes.
It wasn't Frank Farian.
No.
It was them.
No. I mean, Frank went as fast as he could to make sure that he spoke out
Yeah.
before they could, and
Yeah.
all he did is point fingers and talk about how like miserable singers they are and things like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean,
Well,
it was just
Frank puts himself as a victim of this all.
yes.
Oh,
Yes,
because
he
it was
did.
because the scandal was revealed and all this, and I'm thinking to
Mhm.
myself, dude, it's you who caused this.
Yeah.
It's
Well, he's
probably
the one who outed
you.
it. I mean, in the end, that's his ego, right? He was
Yeah.
so hip on like, I'm gonna beat you to it. You're not gonna do it, you're not gonna get this one on me, that he went
Yeah.
out there. But the fact that people just went along with it and were like, okay, and somehow managed to look past how the F do you
Mhm.
fool a producer?
Mm.
No, I'm sorry, the guy's
The
producing this.
guys.
Okay? He knew who sang it. It's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre when you think back on it, but it really did play out this way. I mean, these
Yeah.
guys were the pariahs.
Yeah.
And it's just it's so sad. It really
Yeah.
is. And to
I
know
was
that
I
Rob
was
passed away right before the album, it's like the
ah,
more I looked into this and the more, it's been weeks now where this is kind of what I've been researching and stuff.
yeah.
And
I'm so
I,
glad you brought it out. I'm so glad.
yeah, I
Needs to
keep
continue.
thinking it must have just hurt. It must have hurt Rob to feel like he had to like all he had was to be able to work with this guy again.
Frank Farian opened the door, gave the boys a dream, and took that dream away.
Yeah, he lied. I mean, he lied to them every step of the way, and he just kept
He
promising soon,
and he
soon, soon.
and he could have did it so differently. He could have invested in vocal training. That's all
Yeah,
it would have taken, And it wouldn't have taken probably that much because the boys had that much inspiration, especially Fab.
Mhm.
And I think Fab would have dragged Rob in, right straight into, the performing and singing part of it,
Well, that's the thing too. When I listen, when I listen to, Fab has like this raw talent, right? Where even at like so I go back to the press conference all the time because in some ways that's the first time we're hearing, publicly them singing, and I'm like going, okay, so I go from that, and then I go to, because again, it's like finding a copy of the Rob and Fab album is hard, but they did perform on Arsenio, so I go and I listen to that, and I'm like, just the difference in that 8-month stretch of time with Rob. I mean, as soon as like they worked with him on enunciation and breath control, it's like he had this really deep, rich voice, and it's just and I would just die someday to hear that unreleased album, because I bet you it was phenomenal, even with his substance abuse problems and clearly the demons he was wrestling at that time. I'll bet you after that much time, because even in interviews at that time, like his English was far more clear, so I know his singing.
There you got it. Right there it is. And it's the accent that actually destroyed sort of like the confidence of Rob. So the confidence of Rob wasn't coming out as much because he had the accent, and he was being told this. He was being told by Frank, listen, you got this German accent. We need to get rid of it. We need to get rid of it. I mean, they were, from what I know, they were given a chance on that, but it didn't happen quick enough.
No. Well, and I felt like listening to Fab's interview with Vlad, what came across to me is that Frank was trying to kind of gatekeep. So it's like, as much as he wanted his interviews to be less obvious, if you will, he also didn't want them working with a vocal coach, because he didn't, and that was weird to them. Yeah. But it's like vocal coaching.
Every singer needs it.
Yeah, well, and it crosses over when you're dealing with things like dialects.
Even the pros right now that are on stage, they need vocal coaching to constantly keep that going. It's like a how can you explain it? It's like a Formula One car. It constantly needs maintaining, or a Ferrari,
The one that I like to harken back to. So Celine Dion started singing when she was super duper young, and she would sing English songs that she had to learn phonetically. Yeah. Well, when the time came that she did her album, her first album in English, right? She also was learning the English language and speaking it, and she was much better at speaking it because she had learned the phonetics through the singing. And so when she would sing English songs, even when she only spoke French, she was very close, right? So that's the other reason why it's like, I never remember thinking it was too, I mean, I was like, oh, he has a heavy accent, but I didn't think, oh, why? Well, he can't sing then, this clearly, because other people have done it. But I'm like, I think Frank was like, he wanted him to sound, to not have as heavy of an accent in the interviews, but then he was worried about getting them too confident in their singing.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Anyway, that was kind of my impression of it. But I just don't think it would have happened the same way now. And frankly, just the fact that these guys aren't more, Rob isn't more remembered for, and Fab isn't talked about in the Milli Vanilli days enough for just what amazing dancers and performers and the energy.
They led the way.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, and now these young people are doing the dances.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm like, I can't believe there hasn't been like a TikTok thing. I bet
they may be making fun, but they're still doing the dances. I wonder why.
Yeah, I mean, they were amazing. They were amazing, and Fab still is. And so I'm excited to see what happens. I'm nervous that Frank might have had to sign off on anything because he exploited them, and I'm worried that he might not allow that to be shown as clearly as it was. But I think there's any amount of knowledge out there is more than there is now.
Is he even actually involved in the main, or is he just in the interviews? You know what I mean?
I don't know. See, that's the thing. I don't know. I've been trying to look to see.
As far as I know, he's only involved in the interviews, if that.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope he doesn't have any sort of creative control. That's
because
my
this
main.
seems to be from what they're working out.
Mm-hmm.
That it seems to be on Fab's side this time, which is a
Yes.
good thing. It's a
Yeah,
good
well, that's
thing.
the untold
Fab's in
story.
control. I heard
Mhm.
Fab's in control, and this is
That's good.
good.
Yes,
You know?
that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm hoping for. That's the untold story. You know what I mean? That's the untold story.
Can you imagine how big this band would be right now
Right. Yeah.
if they were still live?
And if they
Nobody
had,
has an idea of how big this band could be.
right, if these two had been able to go and sing
Yeah.
those songs in their own voices, right?
Yeah.
Even after the scandal, yeah. I mean, they had more talent than most of the performers these days. And many of the singers too. Think of all this auto tune and shit. Like, imagine if they were putting that on top of their voices.
Perfect.
You know?
Perfect singers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I've seen Fab do some like acoustic stuff on radio
Mhm.
shows and things like that. He
He's
sounds
insane.
amazing.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, he's
He's
just got the most like smooth I mean, and I'm talking the raps, the singing. I mean, he's really multifaceted in a way that most artists aren't.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a hold of his management, but his management isn't answering. So I'm just going to keep bugging him. You know, I'm not going to talk him, but I'm just going to keep bugging him. I'm ready for this. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm serious about it. I am serious about doing music with Fab. I am serious, and I don't want any other producer involved. Maybe for assistance or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm happy open for that. But I want to bring Rob and Fab's true legacy, maybe hopefully continue it in a way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, oh, I'm great, I'm this and that, it's just I'm that inspiration.
Well,
I feel inspired to do it.
Yes, you're passionate about it. Yeah.
Passionate about it. And
you're very talented, by the way, Outlander. I've listened to some of your music and you're very talented. So you're selling yourself short, by the way.
My rap's horrible. It is. My rap's horrible. It really is. Oh my gosh. That's why I was never on as a performer, continued, performing and stuff, probably because of my confidence and stuff. I would use stuff like alcohol to get on stage. I would,
right. That's not unusual.
Just to drop that little bit of curtain,
Yeah.
And it's probably very common.
Yeah, it is super common. So I was just going to say, remembering what I did, which, so I was the PR, I mean, because everyone has PR, but I was the PR person. They would bring my firm in, when they're not selling tickets that well anymore because they're going to rehab or they got caught with a prostitute or, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, it's known he's deceased. I can't talk about certain specifics, but it's like, one of my biggest clients was Scott Weiland. And everybody knows how he died and what, his struggles along the way. And by the way, he's underrated because those things kind of overshadowed his talent, which was amazing, So it's not uncommon at all. And he had horrible anxiety. Like he struggled and he would play loose and fast with the definition of sober. Yeah. Because and that's why he was notoriously late, is because when he was sober, it was very hard for him to get on stage. He had horrible stage fright.
Yeah, and then when they do drink too much, you end up like Amy Winehouse,
Yes. Oh, so sad, that one too.
Just such a legend too, that got cut short, People can't cope. They can't cope. They alcohol, people don't know that alcohol is a depressant.
Yeah.
It's a depressant. It just destroys you. You can smoke weed all day, but alcohol is a depressant.
There's a reason they call it being intoxicated.
Yeah.
It's a
good point.
Yeah.
Good point, Crafton. Good point.
I just saw something. I'm like, maybe this will help. I don't want to keep making it about music, but I'm like, Mick Mars is suing Motley Crue.
Really?
Yeah. So I guess and he's had health issues for a while, but I guess they tried to fire him, and instead Mick turned around and threw a lawsuit on him this week. It just hit People magazine. I'm like, whoa.
Oh man.
Do you like Motley Crue?
Yes.
Yeah. Before I was so I did like merch modeling for like their underwear. So it's like I was like a Motley Crue underwear when I was like young and hotter, you know.
Butt model.
Butt model. Yeah, pretty much a butt model. I guess that's what it would be, right? It was always from the back.
That counts, mate.
That's where they did all the screen, you know, the screen printing on the back of the shorts and stuff.
Yeah.
But love Motley Crue. So that's shocking to me. I'm like, whoa. But his, you know what? His health is, I mean, but they all have had health issues. So that's kind of shocking too. I don't know. Music business, it's like, do you miss it? Like, do you still do stuff? Or are you kind of like semi-retired, or are you still active?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I was homing in. I was just in depth thinking about Motley Crue. You know what? I'm coming out of my retirement.
Oh, good. I was just going to say, do you miss it? I guess that answers that, huh?
I retired about 14 years ago when I came to the UK, and then I started a computer repair company, and that worked for a few years, and then health issues due to my partner.
Yeah.
And then that's all I done was take care of her, and now my daughter, of course. Yeah. And now I had this experience when my partner passed away. Yeah. I sort of like entered the other side of it.
Yeah.
I can't explain what happened there. And it almost like, it's like going back into history with your mind.
Well, creativity starts to come back. Grief will overshadow a lot.
Yes. You know? Yes. It was, I think the grief had to do with it. It pushed me into that area. Yeah. And what I seen was Rob's pain. Yeah, which was weird. And then at the same time, Fab was, I was just listening to music one day, and Fab's stream came up. Yeah, and I thought I'll just bob in. See, I'll just bob in, and everything just resonated with me. What he was saying, and I started feeling these emotions. I started crying. I started feeling weird things. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't. Yeah. And now I got this thing inside my head going, Dennis, you're 53, you're turning 54, you still got time. Let's build a legacy.
Never too late. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I want to be remembered. I want to be remembered, and I want to, you know, I want people to remember me for good things I did. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Absolutely. You know.
Well, you've done a lot of good things, by the way. You've done great things, like taking care of your partner, and you know, having to make those kind of sacrifices.
I did. I sacrificed my music and everything.
Earning a living, because we all know music. You know, it's not the most stable. I mean, it's feast and famine, really.
Yeah, it split up my marriage, basically. You know, my ex-wife was back then. She didn't believe in the things I did. You know, when we started working with people and stuff, she loved the money, but she didn't love the other part of it. You know. And I was like, well, think about it, you know, that's going to be what I'd be working in right now, you know, and I've been doing music before I met her.
Right.
You know, I've been doing music since I was about 19, 18. It was about the time when just before Robin Fab came out. I was listening to a group called BVSMP. I've showed Crafton the group and stuff. And this type of music sort of like inspired me. I mean, way before that, it was always Michael Jackson and stuff that followed me within my life.
That's lovely. And, my son, so Aiden, he does Michael Jackson like tribute dancing.
Oh wow, I'd love to see it.
He works with somebody that he's amazing on his own. In fact, I think I still have a few videos on my channel, because that's all it used to be, is to share with family his stuff. But he's been doing it. I can't take any credit for that. I'm not a dancer, but my son is amazing. He loves
Michael Jackson. Are you seeing what I have up on the screen?
Let me see.
Well, the genes are within you.
A leader of the band. Well, my dad's a musician as well.
There you go.
There you go. I went to law school. I'm like, somebody has to read the contracts.
There you go.
So now you know where my passion on this one came
from. That's the talent. Law is a talent, and believe it or not, it's something I wanted to get into. I went into what's it called? Patent attorney.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
But the company went bust about a couple months when I was working for them.
Oh no.
They lost somehow. They
Yeah.
lost a deadline and they went bust. I sort of like regret them going under because I would have loved to do it, you know, because I was seeing all these inventions and stuff. I was like,
Unreal. Outlander. So he just
Outlander. Are you reading what I have highlighted in
let
the
me
article?
read it out for people that are on their phones. Okay. So this is talking about the Motley Crue lawsuit that we just brought up. So this is the highlighted part. Mars alleges that the other members of the group engaged in partial or complete miming on the stadium tour, which is this last one, saying that he was the only one performing completely live from top to bottom of each show.
Go Mick Mars.
oh my God.
Tell me that didn't just bring our entire show full
Yeah,
circle.
that was one of suddenly my like off topic
Yeah.
on top. Crazy. Oh my God.
Welcome, music industry.
Right. So
Expose.
Maybe you shouldn't have fucked with Mick Mars. The gist of it is he told them that he could no longer continue touring because of his health conditions, but he was still a member of the band. They accepted his terms and then turned around and told everybody that he was no longer in the band whatsoever.
Oh, they just announced it and didn't tell him.
You didn't tell him.
Right. That's how Scott found out he was out of STP. By the way.
And so Mick Mars is like, look, I think the term is Milli Vanilli-ing your tour there, buddy, huh?
That's crazy. Wow. See, so the more things change, the more they stay the same. Okay. 1990 to now.
And Nikki Sixx has no excuse because he's 30 years sober or something. Really? You can't play your own shit on stage?
They're all kind of old though these days, you know.
Wow.
But
those bass lines are not
Crazy.
Victor Wooten bass lines. I'm sorry. They're straight rock
so funny.
bass lines.
Yeah. Straight 16ths.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that crap. And we're like, are you looking at this? I'm like, we're talking about this.
Well,
then when I looked, I'm like, oh shit.
Did I read that correctly?
Yeah.
Every band does it. How about that?
That's crazy.
Especially when you're just fucking wore out. Yeah, just
Way to go. Way to go, Crafton
like,
and Jim. Way to go. Just get
we
it
might have
exposed.
to, because I think I'm gonna have to delve into this one, Memphis Law. This one's too like personal to me. I'm like, ooh, there's info, you know.
Yeah.
But I was like, ooh, he's fighting.
She's had him on her
Don't be talking about
butt,
Nikki.
Mama. She's not talking shit about it.
Nikki Sixx.
That's why I always say, I'm like, if these
She's had his clothing on her bottom.
If these bitches around here were now, I'm like, my ass used to be on like the big screens at concerts and stuff.
Damn. That's a brag, and that's proud. Be
I'm
proud
like,
of it.
If these people around here had any researching skills, they'd already have found that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but no, so he's I don't know if were you in here? Oh no, you're back finally. So
Sorry.
Mick Mars is suing Motley Crue because they tried to fire him by apparently talking to the press. So he's finding out during like just
they can't fire him. He's in the contract nicely, isn't he?
I don't know. That is bananas. Oh, that's crazy. But no, and then Crafton pulls up the article while we're talking, you know, about all this, and he's accusing them of miming their performances. So I'm like, well, there you go. It fits in with today's topic still. That's craziness.
I would guess if I had Crafton, if we had to make a guess, how much percent are miming? How much are lip syncing out there?
I don't know. I'd go with 50, at least 50%, because there is a lot. Because I mean, as I'm running sound, it's not really a whole lot with a certain genre of music. It just depends on the genre.
Well, but that's because you have a lot. So he worked on Beale Street in Memphis, right? So it's a lot like jazz and things like that. Country, you see it less. But these like pop stars, and I mean, and I guess it depends on how big they are too, because of course local bands too are gonna play. Yeah. But it's, you know, when you start to get into this expectation of these big, you know, shows.
But the hodgepodge of it, like running stuff that's already played in, you know, like when they're supplying you tracks at front of house.
Yeah.
you don't really, the problem is you just leave that set at 0. They already have the volumes on. You're not worried about even going over there and mixing it after sound check.
Right.
So you don't really know how much really they used of pre-recorded stuff. So I could be wrong, because there's a lot of bands that have come through the venues that I mix at that have like, are sending me a left and a right of their freaking tracks, and I just don't even bother. I put it on a scene, you know, where I would have to go and look and see if they're even using it.
Wow.
But like, did you ever have anybody that it was obvious? I guess Kenny G didn't.
No,
I'm really fascinated.
There has been a couple bands where they're like that Three Dog Night thing was totally staged.
Oh,
they weren't playing a single thing, but their excuse for it was they didn't have time to set up the delay towers all around the stadium, and actually, because what happens is, and this is actually a physics problem, and that's how you arrive at a lot of this, is if say you're sitting at one end of the stadium and they're down there at the 35-yard line on the other half of the stadium, and there's cameras shooting on them, and so you're looking up at these camera things, they will look like they are not singing because of the length of time it takes for the music
sound to travel.
So they're going blah 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 like that with their mouth, and then you're here, or vice versa. So they do this in a lot of cases just to get around that. So a lot of the Super Bowl performances are totally tracks. They're just up there just dancing along with it, and it gives the appearance and illusion to everybody watching that everything is in sync. And so you know, there's it's just a really complex issue. Like a lot of times it's necessary. Television does it all the time. Because they don't have time to sit and learn how to mix somebody's song to sound the way it did on the album.
Right, and to sound as good on coming through.
So they're like, give us your karaoke track, and then you can sing to it and say stuff to the, you know, city you're in or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the music is all fake.
But that's part two why it bothers me that almost even in the ones that are supportive of Rob and Fab, they put that stupid MTV thing where it's like, girl, you know.
And that wasn't even anything that made headlines.
No, because they were like ridiculously acrobatic.
I think Ashley Simpson doing her little jiggy dance, and then blaming the band for queuing up the wrong track was a lot more.
Well, never mind that her voice was on it, but it's like, no, that was before much. I mean, it's like Girl You Know It's True was out, but they went on to have that was way before the Grammy, and it was before they were like on the big tour, headlining the tours and all this other stuff. It's like, no, I did nothing to slow anything.
Yeah, but check this out. Wasn't Rob being sarcastic?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, is that
because the press were like, let us hear you sing it.
Oh yes, well, he's like, well, yeah, he's like, fuck it, you know. But he's like, I don't know if these mics are any good. You know, and that's a fact. They're set up for like talking press conference, not for, you know, vocals and acoustics in the room and all that stuff. So it would have sounded much better. I mean, that's what I mean. It was so raw. It's just like if any of us walked up in a city council meeting, for instance, and took one of their microphones and went to sing. You know, it's like you're not going to sound as great as if you're using a microphone made for that purpose and that has been sound checked and all that, you know. And they did great, you know.
Well, check this out. When Queen performed their thing at Wembley, right? Their mic level was set to a set standard, right? And then all of a sudden, the engineer of Queen came in and readjusted it and turned the mic up so it would sound better.
Yeah, and people get all weird too. If you like, I mean, crafty best. Like
it was like,
hey, can you just adjust this, that, here?
Yeah, I want to hear myself sing. You know, it's like, all right. And they adjusted it, you know, just to make it sound better, and it did.
I love Crafton's stories though, because he'll have one musician be like, "Hey, can you turn this up?" And then another one from the band like, "Hey, can you turn this way?"
Running monitors at the same time you're trying to run front of house can get funny. My favorite is just when I reach over, like, because you're on these digital consoles where you have to switch scenes and you have to hit this button and go over there. And so I'm on the scene with the band instruments, and the singer will start pointing upward and trying to say they want more in their monitor. And I reach over to adjust it. I'll hit the scene, and they'll go, they do the okay sign. Thank you. Like, I haven't adjusted your fucking shit yet. All I did was kick over to the scene to look for your
Oh, they're like,
track.
sounds much better, bro.
They're like, thanks, dude. Yeah, I get more of that than anything else.
Really?
Yeah, it used to be a thing when, especially a person is just
So
because a
funny.
lot of singers are nervous and they think
Mhm.
they want to hear something. I mean, they're just
Well,
doing it just to do
They're
it.
being perfectionistic.
So sometimes if you don't want to mess with the balance in the room,
yeah.
you can just reach over and act like you're doing it, and
Right.
it is somewhat of a joke. But they will go, okay, it sounds great, and you're like, I'm just really helping you out by making you think I'm
doing
it.
Right
Yeah,
here. Yeah.
because you know there's nothing that can be done, especially if
That's
you've
funny.
turned it up as loud as it can go in the speaker without
Yeah.
feeding back. You're like, no, I'm not.
Right.
You're not gonna just flip them off and go, no.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, screw you.
All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna put,
Have a great show.
Yeah.
It was a great show. It really was. Fantastic.
So
You
I
two-
am
You
putting
two
down-
ought to do a show about Crafton shows. I'm serious. To talk about that, I would be rolling on the floor. I'd have to cut my mind. I wouldn't even be involved in that. I'd be just rolling on the
we
floor.
have. Most people think of our mate. So he got. Are you subscribed? So I don't know if you knew or were around when we were talking about any of it. But so Crafton lost his channels the day before.
I heard about
the day
that.
before our wedding. So he got his channels back.
Why did he lose them?
Well, I guess it's. I don't know, like mass recording.
Yeah,
it's like a little bit.
But I
We
actually
know,
I'm gonna
but-
forget this story if I don't. I'm not.
If you made a mistake, you made a mistake. Hey.
No. It
Oh.
wasn't. It was all false. They
Okay.
came back
There
and
you
they
go.
No,
said
they
no,
corrected
that none
it.
of it was in violation.
Yeah, they corrected.
Good. Wow.
My stories now include shit like this. Near Christmas, I had this old dude that wanted to get up in the middle of like a variety show and play his acoustic guitar and sing and everything. He kept asking me the same question over and over and over. And he's like, so I plug into this? And I was like, yeah, you plug into that. And then I came back to the front of the house and I said to the lighting guy, I was like, I don't know who this old dude is. I'm like, I've told him like 15 times. That's the fucking, he sings this song, right?
Yeah.
And then, and it's Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. And I'm like, and I said to the lady, I was like, damn, he's nailing it. Turned out it was the actual guy. I was like, holy shit. I'm sitting here going, why is this old dude trying to get up here? And everybody's like,
that was
I'm
a flashback
gonna
like
go,
with
yeah,
me
look
and
into
Michael
that.
Jackson, you know.
He was the real dude. I was like, okay, pie in my face.
That's the same with me and Michael Jackson. I once in the 80s, I went to with my parents, I believe it was 84 or something like that. And it was around the town Captain EO. He was doing Captain EO, and they were performing on stage in Disneyland, and they were shooting somehow the scenes of it or something like that. I did not know at the time that that was Michael Jackson, even though I had been such a huge fan in the time. I did not know. It was till years later I started, researching. Oh, he did Captain EO. Wait a minute, that rings.
Wait a minute, yeah.
I've been here before, and then all of a sudden I just remember the whole like the suits and stuff they had. Well, the costumes they had on and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was Michael, and I couldn't, I couldn't believe it, and that I only seen him for maybe like 20 seconds because we just moved on.
Yeah.
Because I would have stayed there all damn day if I'd known it, Wow.
Yeah.
Those
great.
moments.
Oh my gosh, I would have loved to see Michael Jackson perform.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I did, but I didn't know.
You did, but you didn't. Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah,
That's so funny.
It's a weird story, though.
But what I was going to say, honey, is that so most people think like Kim and Crafton's like the main channel, but it's like, no, our brand channel is the Mediocratics, which is more the music channel. I'm like, that's exactly where those kind of stories should.
Well, that's where you need to pick up on. Pick up on that, and then do the things like you have now on the side too, just to keep it going and just keep it growing, keep on going.
So you guys, I just put Fab's channel in the chat, and again, he's live every Sunday.
Do come in the chat. Yeah,
check it
really
out.
Chat with Fab. You can really chat with him, and if you're
Well,
really
he has
into
an amazing community too. His community is so very nice. and
They are.
welcoming.
They are
And
just like
then
this community.
yeah, and then you can check out his website,
Mhm.
which is where you can kind of find out more about like his philosophies and the symbolism of the 14, and it's essentially how he overcame this stuff. He's very self-reflective, and I admire how able he is to describe the things he's gone through and share how he sees things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we all know he's been through a lot, and he is just one of the most like positive people. I mean, he's amazing, and I'm not just saying that. It's like he's very inspirational.
He's a positive person.
Yeah, he is. And
He's-
oh, thank you, Rose. Mine went into.
I think he saved me in a way.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's the thing too. When I came across, ever since I came across his stuff, because like I said, it's very weird how it happened. Like I said, I just heard a song, but I hadn't heard any of their songs in so long. I mean, they're not really played that much on the radio, and you don't hear them.
Mhm.
So when I heard it, I was like, gosh, I wonder what happened. Like, and I just started thinking, and I hadn't thought about it in forever.
Yeah.
And so, but ever since I found his YouTube channel, like I'm there each Sunday. I mean, and I've watched so many of his videos because I'm just like, wow, it's like this guy is extremely thoughtful, very deep, very introspective. And why?
Don't forget the time he's online. He'll be online from here. It's around 5 o'clock at
I see. So I'm East Coast, you guys, and it's usually it's like 11 noon, sometimes closer to 1. I noticed it's been different just since I've been there. But yeah, I mean, it's really worth it though to check out. It's helpful.
Oh, yeah. It is. Okay, I'm going to drop out now.
Right,
you did a great job. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit.
You bet. Well, and I'm just so glad that I met you over there too, by the way. That's where I met Outlander, you guys, if you were wondering.
And I enjoyed all of you being here, really love chatting to all of you and stuff like that. You've become part of my family and friends. And I hope we just keep going the way it does, and
for sure. Well, and I don't know, Aiden, God, I just called you my son's name, honey. Sorry.
No worries.
Do you want to say anything about this, Crafton, since you dropped it in my chats?
No, I know.
No. Okay. He doesn't. He's just dropping his links in my chat. That's okay.
Drop the links.
All right, Outlander. Well, have a good rest of your day.
Have a good day too.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care.
Yeah, I think you'd really, really like it, Wyoming. Because so I think of like when Voices plays Brene Brown, and they're very different, but it is that same sort of. I mean, it's all very thoughtful. Everything he says is very thoughtful, and it applies to different things in different people's lives. You know what I mean? But it gets you thinking too. And he's very calming, and of course he breaks out in songs sometimes. You know what I mean? Like there's it's fun, but it's low key, and it really is kind of a escape from all this drama, and it helps get your mind back into what matters. Awesome. Yeah. So he's live every Sunday. I agree with that. If you're still here, Outlander. I know his daughter was trying to get his attention. But Rose says you're a wonderful addition to the channel. I agree with that. I'm so happy that I met him. So I guess we're definitely not playing Baby Don't Forget My Number on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me go over here. Does everyone have plans for tomorrow? So I think I'm going to go live on Patreon later, you guys. That's why I'm not going to complain too much. Crafton can put his links in my channel today.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was actually Xana's latest video where she brought up Lynn, who I forgot I forget she even has a channel. So I'm midway through that live. I think I want to do some commentary. So I'll do a community post when that happens. There will be some content going up probably tomorrow, which I know is Easter, but it's going to be pre-recorded content. So I have to get through some of that. Some of it will be members only. I think everyone here now is members. But Yeah, and I'm learning how to do like editing. So that's why I'm going to make it members only. They're nicer to me.
Easier on them.
I got my second sponsor,
Yeah.
you guys, and it's eSalon, which is like a custom hair coloring thing you can do online or whatever. So I'm excited. What they sent me looks very cool, very close. You know, I'm like starting to get grays and stuff like that. But obviously you can't like go live and be like, hey guys, just hang out here for 30 minutes while I get in the shower, you know. So yeah, keep an eye out. My first like composed video. I'm not feeling very confident. So that will be members only because it's like just gotta start knocking them out and getting used to it. Hey Missy, how are you? There's a Patreon link, guys, definitely. So I think it'll be today. I don't know that I'll be able to hold myself in much. I have to finish listening to it, but so far I'm just annoyed. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna correct some things. Anything else you want to say, my love?
No, dear. I think you did a great job.
It was a fun live. I like my Saturday. I mean, it's like, yeah, you know. By the way, people are like, drama. Don't talk about the drama. If you don't talk about, I mean, we see what happens, right? So it's like, but I love Saturdays because we can just talk about things that I get all excited about and have spent some time looking into. I don't think I could do this more than once a week because it does take up a lot of time. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I'm going to look more into the Motley Crue thing, but otherwise, I don't know. There's so far, I think everybody wanted songs. Nobody wanted to pick a show topic. So, in our fundraiser, if you gave at the $50 level, or if you gave multiples of 50, you can also pick a show topic too, unless you. So like Rose, you could pick a show topic as well. Susie, same thing. Mod Squad, the same thing. So if there's anything you guys want to talk about, let me know. And yeah, other than that, let me go by y'all. And if I don't, I'm sure I'll see everybody before then. But if I don't, have a happy Easter. I hope everyone has a good and stress-free day with their families. And PayPal link in here because Aiden's home, so anything is going to go to shoring up his Easter basket. I have named it the Kim is Cooler Than Craftin' Fund because I'm tired of him being like, oh, you small chatters are so cute. I'm like, oh,
she
yeah.
doesn't mean that. That's a
Aren't
joke.
you just such a badass with your 60s and people being? No, when you say it, it's a joke, but
Yeah. Just joke.
I'm still going to have a Kim's Cooler Than Craftin'. It's not an official fund, by the way. It's just my PayPal. We actually talked about if we should go live at the same time with the morning show and see who gets the most views. Or the most.
No, we should go live and start shit talking each other's chat so that we get a full blown.
You guys can go back. Yeah,
GW
you guys can go
happening.
back and forth and be like, oh my God, you
People
know what
make
her
it,
chat is saying?
Chat to chat. See how long we can.
That might be fun.
Keep it going.
That might be fun. I took Aiden to see the Jacksons, but it was, of course, after, Michael wasn't there anymore. But it was still amazing. He got all their autographs, too. I have a picture of him because he went dressed in, like, his Billie Jean jacket and the glove. Oh, it's good memories. All right, guys. Well, I'm sure I will see everyone around the tubes. Yeah. Well, maybe not an expose, Outlander, but like we'll go live at the same time, right? And that way we'll have like a little friendly competition, me and Crafton. Have some faux drama. Are you excited for Easter, honey? No?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm just picking my song because I know which one I'm not going to be playing. Let's see. We will leave well. Okay, we'll end with Crafton's song. This is Crafton playing, and this is his song. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.